Ski. In this module, we're going to wrap up our discussion of social engineering with a quick domain review. This domain is part of the Ethical Hacker series, designed to help you pass the EC Council's Certified Ethical Hacker exam, also known as 31250. If you're studying for the CEH exam, here's where you are in the series. So what did we cover? We began with a set of social engineering concepts and techniques. Social engineering is the art of manipulation and relies on a number of principles such as reciprocity, commitment, social proof, authority, liking, and scarcity. We talked about the 4 phases of attack, which include research, choosing a target, pretext, and exploit. We then looked at some attack vectors including phishing, vishing, smishing, and impersonation. Lastly, we discussed physical social engineering, such as tailgating, dumpster diving, and baiting. Insider threat is a social engineering from the inside. We looked at how an employee may attack an organization and why. Lastly, we looked at the loss of data through impersonation, such as rogue websites or a phishing attack. The previously discussed attacks lead to things like identity theft. Here, the target finds themselves as a victim of fraud. And lastly, we looked at numerous ways in which we can prevent physical and digital attacks, including security measures such as biometrics and security awareness training. For additional resources, please review the exercise files associated with this exam. I wish you the best of luck on your CEH journey. It is an eye-opening exam that covers a lot, but also teaches you a lot about being an ethical hacker. Thank you for spending this time with me and learning about social engineering. Hi, I'm Alex Dushinsky. Welcome to this course on social engineering. In this course, we'll dive straight into the concepts, techniques, and principles of social engineering. We'll also look at the consequences of these attacks and what mitigating factors are available for us to use to defend ourselves. Let's get started. This course is part of a larger course family. The Ethical Hacking series covers topics and skills that most ethical hackers should know and be able to perform. I'm very excited to bring you this material and look forward to helping you pass the Certified Ethical Hacker exam. Today we're going to talk about social engineering. We'll begin with social engineering concepts and define social engineering. We'll then tackle why it works and look at its principles. Next, we'll look at various techniques used by attackers. We'll look at something called pretexting and how a good pretext can make or break your social engineering efforts, and discuss the various attack vectors available. We'll wrap up this module with a look at physical social engineering attacks. Social engineering concepts. Let's talk a little bit about data breaches. What are the main causes of a data breach, and how does this relate to social engineering? Roughly 25% of all breaches are caused by human error. While some of that is certainly someone making an honest mistake, I'd argue that a lot of human error factors come from performing actions that someone else directed you to perform. That is social engineering in practice. 27% of breaches are attributed to process failure. Following a set of policies and procedures is an important part of working within an organization. If you could be convinced not to follow the proper guidelines and instead perform an action that you normally wouldn't do, that is social engineering as well. In fact, 80% of data breaches today involve some form of social engineering. So what is it, and how is it so prevalent in today's attack landscape? I'm going to define social engineering as the art of manipulating an individual or a group of individuals into performing actions that they normally wouldn't perform or divulging information they typically wouldn't provide. Simply put, it is the art of human manipulation. So how does social engineering work? Social engineering has been around for centuries. Up until it evolved as a cybersecurity concept, we called social engineering a con, and social engineers were con men. A 1973 film called The Sting explores a con that takes place in 1936. And the earliest social engineering feat on record may be the Trojan horse, which was used by the Greeks during the Trojan War in 1184 BC. Social engineering works because it feeds on the psychology of human beings. We're afraid to miss out. We want to trust everyone. We want to be included. and if someone does a good deed for us, we want to return that favor. These are the basic principles of social engineering. Let's take a look at these principles in a bit more detail. Generally speaking, people are more likely to help the person that helps them first. Reciprocity works because people feel obligated to return the favor. This is why things like free samples work so well. You may be inclined to buy a product just because you received the free sample and not because the product is any good. In the context of social engineering, you only need to seem to solve a problem for the target. For example, sending them a note to explain that you've stopped a breach on their account may gain you some points as the person realizes that you've done them a great service and saved the day. They may be inclined to give you their password if you make this seem convincing enough. People are likely to follow through on something they've committed to. So in this type of attack, it's extremely important for social engineers to keep the target accountable. Here we establish a goal for the target, get their commitment, and lead them down a path of providing us access information or whatever it is that we're after. Continually reinforcing the commitment helps move the process along. Come on, you've got this, and we're almost there, and other supporting phrases help us become successful when using the principle of commitment. Social proof relies on the fact that people will do things that they see other people doing. Essentially, you need to convince someone that what they're about to do is perfectly normal and has been done by many other people as well. Authority relies on the fact that most people will follow the direction of authority figures. So if you're impersonating an engineer that works for a utility company and you tell people to evacuate because you smell gas, people are inclined to do so even if they don't smell the gas themselves. Liking is similar to reciprocity. Here we establish a good rapport with the target. If we're on common ground, have common interests, common beliefs, it's easy for the target to like us, and if they do, they may be more inclined to execute on our behalf. Scarcity is used to create a perceived value. For example, Xbox and PlayStation consoles were hardly available for well over a year since launch, and anyone who had one could sell it for much more than the console retailed for. That scarcity of consoles created a frenzy where people would pay much more just to own the device. We can use this tactic to get people to download files, open PDFs, and go to specific websites. For example, if an attacker says something like, "Hey, I only have 2 tickets left for this event. Could you please open the PDF I just emailed you and confirm your information so I can reserve these seats for you before someone else grabs them?" You may be more inclined to do so knowing that this is a short-lived, time-sensitive event. The PDF in this example could of course open up a shell and give the attacker full access to your environment. So what we've just talked about are various persuasion techniques used by social engineers, marketers, and others. You may recognize all of these things in your day-to-day life. For example, ever receive a free sample? Has anyone told you that this sale is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and that these prices will never be seen again? So why do they work? A lot of this has to do with trust. If you can build trust between you and the target, you'll establish a pathway for these techniques to work. If the person trusts you in some way, they are less likely to question you. Now, having these principles under our belt is only half the battle. We still need to understand the various techniques under which these principles can be applied, and we'll tackle that next. Hi, I'm Alex Dushinsky. In this module, we're going to look further at how social engineering can impact organizations or individuals. We then look at possible ways that we can prevent these types of attacks. Today, we're going to dive a bit deeper into social engineering. First, we'll look at rogue websites and work with a tool called the Social Engineering Toolkit to create and host our rogue application. Next, we look at consequences of these types of attacks on our lives at work and at home. We'll look at identity theft and insider threats. Next, we'll look at different ways in which we can prevent these types of attacks. Specifically, we'll look at physical and digital protection techniques. The Social Engineering Toolkit. The Social Engineering Toolkit, or SET for short, is an open-source application that allows you to create social engineering attacks. It was written by Dave Kennedy, who founded TrustedSec, a cybersecurity firm in Fairlawn, Ohio. The software is free and open source and can be downloaded via GitHub. It is also part of Kali Linux and can be used to help penetration test an organization. The software is written in Python and the source code is freely available, so it's easy to modify. Additionally, it supports customization, so penetration testers can create their own modules or use third-party modules to achieve their goals. So what does it do? Well, quite a bit. Here's a quick rundown of the most popular attacks. It has a module that allows us to create phishing campaigns. This includes the ability to set up your own email messages with malicious payloads and send them via the tool to your target. The web attack module is what we're going to work with today. There are several different exploits available, including malicious Java applet attacks, Metasploit attacks, and credential harvesting. The malicious media attack vector lets you create flash drives or CD or DVD media that contain Metasploit payloads that run automatically when the media is inserted into a computer. The mass mailer lets you send out email using Gmail or your own custom SMTP server. SMS spoofing is a useful attack where text messages are involved. Here you're able to spoof the caller ID number that appears, leading a victim to believe that the message is coming from someone else. The wireless access point attack allows you to replicate an existing wireless network. Since most people have their Wi-Fi settings remembered and the device tends to connect automatically to these networks, this type of attack allows you to quickly connect to people in the area and direct them to a malicious website that will download and install additional malware on the target computer. This is called wireless social engineering, and there are other tools that perform this work. For example, Wi-Fi Fisher, part of Kali Linux, does a similar job. There are also a number of PowerShell attacks within SET. These types of attacks help you establish a reverse shell and can be combined with other attacks. For example, using the wireless access point attack, we can connect to a user, then get them to download the reverse PowerShell app and run it locally, giving the attacker full access to the victim's computer. Now, if all of that wasn't enough, there's still more. There is QR code attack, which generates a QR code for websites with malicious payloads. There are also Adreno-based attacks, and as mentioned earlier, custom and third-party module support. So what are the advantages of using SET? Well, it's quick and easy to get started. It takes almost no effort at all to produce a relatively high-quality attack. As mentioned before, it's open source, so it's easy to customize to suit your needs, and plenty of support from the community through custom module development. In this demo, we're going to look at the social engineering toolkit. We'll begin by creating a malicious website, and then we're going to explore how this could be used by an attacker coming from within the company, an insider threat. Let's get started. In this scenario, I will be an insider threat, a person working for an organization looking to exfiltrate documents containing the latest company plans. I'm doing this because I really work for a competitor and would prefer that this company didn't succeed in its plans. My target is their CEO. Okay, so we're in Kali Linux, and I have a terminal window opened and zoomed in. We're going to run the command that launches the social engineering toolkit. Alternatively, you can find the software by navigating into the menu and performing a search. The command is sudo or superuser se toolkit. I'm going to hit enter. And as you can see, it opened and loaded. I've entered my sudo password previously. Because this is a console-based application, it can be accessed via SSH or through the terminal. The navigation consists of numeric choices, with 99 being used as back or exit. I'm going to select the first choice, which is the social engineering attacks. On this menu, we have options for various types of attack. I'm most interested in grabbing the CEO's credentials and accessing files stored in their Google Drive account. I can do a spear phishing campaign or a website attack vector. Since this company uses Google Docs and employees frequently get email notifications of shared documents, I think my best vector is to clone the Google login page to collect the credentials and customize one of these document share notifications to direct the CEO at the rogue website. If the CEO enters the credentials into the fake site, I'll have what I need to complete my mission. I'm going to select the second choice here. From this menu, I'm going to choose the Credential Harvester attack method, which is the third option. Now we get down to the details. I can use one of the built-in templates, clone an existing website, much like we did in the previous module, or import my own web application that will perform the collection. I'm going to choose the first option, which will let me choose from an existing template. Because this attack spins up and hosts an entire website, I need to specify the IP address of where this will run from. Using the IP address of Cali is fine, and that's what I'm going to do here, but keep in mind that I'm using a private IP address space, which would not work if you're trying to attack from outside of an organization's network or direct victims to a publicly facing website. In that case, Cali can be hosted in the cloud, and the IP address would be the public IP address. Additionally, you can take things further and get a domain name for the public IP as well. Since I'm going to use the private IP address for the demo, I'm going to hit enter. Now my three choices of attack are Java update required, Google, or Twitter. Since I'm trying to mimic a Google Docs share, I'll select the second choice here. And that's all it takes. Switching to a different PC, we can go to a web browser and enter the IP address that we previously accepted. And here's our rogue website, which looks a lot like the Google login page. Once we visit this site, you can see that Set picked up the traffic and is reporting it. That's all it takes to set up and run a rogue website. While the scenario I'm using here is of an insider threat, an identical attack can be used as part of penetration testing engagement. Oftentimes, we want to test how well security awareness training is working with employees, and this is a great method to test their understanding of phishing and what to look out for on rogue websites. Okay, let's shift focus to Gmail and craft our malicious payload for the CEO. Sarah, an employee of the company, previously shared a document with me, and I received this type of notification from Google. I'm simply forwarding this notification to myself and then altering the email itself a bit. What I will do now is update the links in this email to point to the rogue Google website we just spun up. Now we just need to enter the CEO's email address and off it goes. And this is what it looks like. The CEO receives the email and may not notice who it's actually from. The CEO will see that Sarah shared something with them and click on the document link to open it. They will be looking at our rogue website. They enter their credentials and hit sign in and get redirected. From the CEO's perspective, we got redirected and nothing happened. But look at the terminal window in Kali Linux. We have the username and password that we were hoping for. Now I can quickly log in, get the docs that I want, and get out. I can make things difficult for the CEO as well by changing their Google password immediately upon login. Now the CEO can't communicate via email and is essentially locked out of their account. Sarah has gone home for the day, so she can't be reached. All I need is a couple of minutes in the account, but may have hours since the CEO may think it's a Google issue and ignore it until the following day. Done at the right time of day on a Friday, this may not get resolved until Monday, giving the attacker a full weekend of access. Now here I played the role of an internal threat because I wanted to set the stage for what we're going to talk about next. But again, I want to point out that the tools here are not just for attackers. Ethical hacking requires the mindset and the tools that are similar, if not the same, as what attackers may use. Our best method of defense is education, and running scenarios like this one as an ethical hacker strengthens an organization's security posture. If accounts are compromised, these become discussion points and countermeasures can be implemented. Those remediations, such as two-factor authentication, may not be in place because the company doesn't believe that something like this can happen. Proving that it can opens up the dialogue and helps you have these types of conversations with the decision makers. Social engineering techniques. Let's talk a little bit about the various aspects or phases of an attack. Where should we start and what do we need to do to pull off a successful social engineering campaign? First, we need to research the organization and its employees. The more information we learn about them, the clearer the remaining steps become. For example, let's say we uncover that the company is using a vulnerable piece of software. This software may be listed on a job posting, or you may find an invoice for it in the dumpster, or by using a form of passive reconnaissance. Now that we know more about the company and its people, we can identify the target or set of targets that we're going to attempt to extract information from. These targets are chosen based on the fact that they can help get us closer to our goal. Next, we're going to write a pretext. This is the backstory and the script that we will use to start building a relationship with our target. This helps build the trust we need in order to accomplish our attack. The last aspect of the attack is the actual exploitation of the relationship we have established with the target. This is what gets us in the door or provides us the detailed information that we're looking for. The pretext is an important part of your attack. It's the detail for why you're engaging with the target. This backstory should be detailed enough and logical enough for the target to come to conclusions on their own about why you're asking them to perform a particular task. For example, say that you needed to get someone to insert a flash drive into their PC. What sort of pretext could you use? Well, if you wander into their office with a pile of documents that are soggy and dripping with coffee and offer up a story about how you hit the brakes while driving over here, spilled coffee all over the place, and how these super important documents must get to the CEO of your company ASAP, you would probably be believable. After all, you're in front of them with a pile of wet paper. Now you can ask if your target would mind printing out a fresh set of documents you happen to have on this thumb drive. If you look worried enough, likable enough, and have established some sort of rapport and trust with the user, they are inclined to help you, even if the company has a specific policy forbidding the use of external flash drives. Okay, so let's unpack that. The script or pretext is the backstory that we're following. Let's assume that our goal is to walk into Company X and get someone to plug our thumb drive into their computer. We can then get a remote shell and establish a foothold. In this script, we should identify how our story will help us get to our goal. You need to consider who your targets are and how they're going to respond. For example, handing a thumb drive to a janitor or a security guard and asking them to print something out probably won't work. But if your target is the office admin, you have a fair shot. The story you put together must help you achieve the goal. Spilled coffee all over super important documents meant for the CEO doesn't directly do that, but it can logically lead the target to your request of printing out a fresh set as a totally proper action for you to take based on the circumstances. It's not suspicious, you're in a jam. The hook is the reason why the target engages with you. In this case, it's clear you're in trouble and that you have stuff for the CEO of the company. You may look pathetic or be very charming and likable, and all of these things help the target make the decision to help you or not. If you're looking rather pathetic with your pile of wet documents and you're about to start crying, knowing that you're extremely close to losing your job, they may take pity on you, or if you're extremely nice, they may help you simply because they like you. Now, this doesn't have to be done in person. In fact, most social engineering attack vectors are usually not done in person at all. The first, called phishing, is one that you're probably most familiar with. Phishing is most prevalent through email, but can be done through instant messenger or via social networks as well. It involves sending requests using some form of deception in an effort to elicit information. For example, this could be an email pretending to be from Microsoft asking you to log in and confirm something in your Office 365 account. Typically, phishing attacks are sent out en masse, with small percentages falling for it, while the rest of us realize that it's a scam. Other variations of this include spear phishing, which target very specific individuals, such as brand new employees, who may not know better. Spear phishing emails are more customized to be more believable to the intended target, so that new employees may get a welcome note from their CEO asking them to do something as a special project. And speaking of CEOs, whaling is another form of phishing that targets senior executives, such as CEOs, with the same intent. Phishing is similar, except that it's done using voice communication. Typically, these are phone calls that impersonate someone. Ever receive a call from the IRS or your local sheriff? In both cases, they want you to call and provide information in order for you to avoid fines or jail. Smishing is another form of attack. This one is popular, attempting to get you to circumvent your two-factor authentication as it takes place over SMS. You may get a text from your IT department asking you to provide the token you just received. In fact, the attacker is logging into your account because your username and password were somehow compromised, and they are looking for that 2FA token to complete the login process. Impersonation is another vector that is used frequently. Physical impersonation can include impersonation of utility workers, IT, or even executive staff. Digital impersonation could be in the form of phishing attacks that pretend to be emailed from Microsoft or can be cloned websites that look like the real thing. In all cases, providing your details here will get your actual accounts compromised, which is something we're going to look at next. In this demo, we're going to look at some of these attack vectors in action. First, we'll review a typical phishing email, and then we'll look at a tool called WinHTTrack, which will let us clone an entire website with just a few clicks. Here's an example of a phishing email. I have two examples to demonstrate with today, and I wanted to break them down and show you why they're effective. Both examples are from security awareness training that I did a few months back for an organization. As part of that, I used a service to send out phishing emails in an effort to see how many people would click on the email training. The statistics were not all bad, with 40% of the recipients reporting this as spam almost immediately, roughly 50% completely ignored it or deleted it, but the remaining 10% either interacted with this message or clicked on the links within it at least once. To protect the innocent, I've replaced dates, names, and IP addresses with sample data, and to make it easier to demonstrate, I've extracted the emails out of Outlook and saved them as HTML. That's what we're looking at here. Our first case is this password change email, supposedly from Microsoft. Most phishing campaigns are designed to get you to act. In most cases, the action requires you to log in and update something or confirm something within the sender's portal. The process of logging in, of course, exposes your credentials to the attacker. This is because the site you're logging into belongs to the attacker, not the actual vendor. So in this case, we see a reference to Microsoft accounts and a big message saying that your password has been changed. This, however, can be anything. Jira accounts, Adobe accounts, any of the vendors used by organizations can replace Microsoft in this scenario. The email proceeds to tell you that someone using an iOS device in Safari changed your password. The message also tells you that you can ignore this if this is the action that you started yourself. Since it wasn't you, your immediate reaction is to get online and try to log in. All of the links here point to msupdate.net website, which is not Microsoft.com. Additionally, looking at the specifics of the link, you can see that route PHP is being called. PHP on a Microsoft site? I've never seen that. So what are the dead giveaways? Yes, msupdate.net is the first. It's not Microsoft.com. Lack of the Microsoft logo is another. Poorly constructed and written. Compare this to the actual emails that you get from Microsoft. Here's an example. Note the use of the Office 365 logo, the Microsoft logo, and the difference in formatting. Additionally, why is information spelled as info? I would bet Microsoft writes the full word out. These messages are typically action-oriented. While the messaging plays it cool with you can ignore this and you can opt out, it really wants you to be caught off guard and click on any of the links to update your password. Here's another example. They do use the UPS logo and the correct colors, but just like with the Microsoft email, it's poorly written. Uses shipment-status.com instead of ups.com and is trying to get you to click on the link to take the next steps. That next step is usually a website that asks you to log in. It has to look legitimate in order to work. So how do they pull that off? Website cloning is one of the easier techniques in the social engineering arsenal. Let's take a closer look at that. HTTrack is a free open source utility for copying websites. This tool has been around for years and is designed to navigate through all of the links on a given website and download the content to your local hard drive. You can configure it to download images, style sheets, or just the raw HTML files. From the download section, Choose the setup package best suited for your environment, then download and install the software. For this example, I'm going to concentrate on the UPS.com login screen. I would like to clone that because as an attacker, if I send out phishing emails targeting UPS customers, I can use that login screen to collect credentials. Remember that I don't need the entire UPS website. I need just enough to grab the credentials. Once I have the HTML files, I can simply edit them, add my own backend processing that captures the information I'm looking for, host it on shipmentstatus.com, and I'm ready to send out my emails. HTTrack is wizard-based. We're going to walk through this wizard. Enter UPS and note the path where the sites will be stored. Enter the path for the site you want to download and complete the process. There are many more options available within the utility. I only went through the default set, and as you can see, it's now downloading the software to the computer. Okay, the process is complete, and we can look at the mirrored website. And here is the UPS cloned website. As you can see, it looks just like the real thing. But if you look at the address bar, you'll see that it's file-based URL and not actually ups.com. From here, I can edit this HTML, make the changes that I need, and deploy. Consequences of social engineering. Social engineering is part of 80% of attacks. It is a very prevalent method that allows hackers to gain access to sensitive information. So what are the stakes here? First, we have loss of data. This can include anything, but typically we're talking about sensitive data, which could be anything from personal information to company secrets. In many cases, the loss of this type of information is devastating to an organization, and many don't even recover from a breach. This is one of the reasons why a breached organization may not recover. Once breached, customer confidence wanes, and they may have trouble getting new customers or even getting vendors to work with them. Between lawsuits and remediation costs, dealing with a breach is an expensive proposition. According to a report published by IBM, the current average cost of a breach is just over $4 million. Cybersecurity events cause complete disruption to an organization, from IT shutting down affected systems to the legal department preparing to defend the company, to auditors, insurance agents, forensic investigators, and law enforcement being part of the scene. It may be difficult, if not impossible, to get any work done for some time. One of the biggest problems with breaches is that they can easily cause identity theft. This happens when personal information is stolen and then shared online or sold to other attackers. This information can include medical details or credit card information, or even a person's social security number. This leads to possible credit card accounts being opened under the victim's social security number and quickly maxed out before the victim even knows what happened. An even more sinister problem is when an attacker files taxes on your behalf. The taxes are completely made up, and the attacker files them in such a way as to get a refund from the IRS. Eventually, the victim goes to file the same tax return, which is rejected by the IRS. Imagine trying to unwind that mess. IRS doesn't take phone calls, and explaining to them that you didn't file the other return requires legal and accounting intervention. Worse yet, since a fraudulent return was filed under your name, the IRS may actually audit you as a result. Lastly, impersonation is another problem. Here we have scenarios where various services may be used by an attacker using a victim's social security number. These services may be food stamps, may be school-related programs, or other government-run programs. Imagine any of these scenarios, and now think about how to unwind and reverse the damage. Once something is on the internet, it tends to stay there, so it's very difficult to undo what was done, and it may take years to fully recover one's credit or identity. There are also no guarantees that it wouldn't happen again either. In our demo, we briefly looked at how easy it could be to perform an insider threat attack. There's various motivation for this, but typically an insider threat is an employee of the organization that he or she is attacking, and that employee typically has malicious intent. Some of the reasons for this could be because they feel they were wronged in some way, or because competitors paying them to retrieve company secrets. Bottom line is that insider threat is very difficult to identify because anyone who's working at the company can be the attacker. Okay, so how do we defend ourselves? Well, that is the discussion we're going to have next as we talk about the countermeasures for social engineering. Social engineering countermeasures. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do to prevent social engineering attacks. First, and probably most important, is security awareness training. This is one of the best methods for preventing attack. Education allows potential victims to identify the attack and avoid it. Security awareness training should include modules on phishing and physical social engineering techniques such as shoulder surfing and tailgating. To prevent insider threats, it's best to have a solid set of policies and procedures that everyone must follow. This would include HR-related procedures such as background checks for all employees done on an annual basis. Job rotation is a great way to help with separation of duties, while mandatory vacations can help identify malicious activities. Other policies such as clean desk and strong password policy help keep an organization's data safe. In the event that your account is compromised, having a strong two-factor authentication mechanism for all of your accounts that support it may be the difference between a breach and a foiled attempt. It is a great defense against continually rising phishing and rogue website attacks. Lastly, every job role should be given permission that are just enough to complete the necessary work. The principle of least privilege requires that users only have the permission they need and nothing more. With other defenses in place such as job rotation, strong password policy, and two-factor authentication, even if someone's account is compromised, the exposure to the organization should not be greater than allowed by the permissions of the compromised account. Now let's talk a little bit about physical security. First, there are man traps. The idea here is that you walk through an intermediary room where you must be alone. It may be done in such a way as to only allow one person to fit comfortably. You end up walking into the man trap and closing the door behind you, then opening the door in front of you and proceeding through. Think of it as an airlock. This greatly reduces the chances of having a tailgater enter with you. It also takes the psychological aspect of courtesy from the situation. You may want to hold the door for someone whose hands are full and let them through, but with a man trap, the protocol is clear and you can't do it. Bollards are those metal or cement pillars that we see typically in front of glass doors and windows. This type of defense prevents cars from jumping the curb and driving through the glass door. Surveillance is another great physical security measure. For example, you could use cameras to see if anyone is dumpster diving behind your building and address it. Improper logs show visitors and others who have had access to the building. These types of security measures may act as a deterrent and also provide basic detective controls for an organization. Biometrics is another option. These tend to verify the individual in question. Let's look at those in a bit more detail. You may recall the three factors of authentication. They are what you know, what you have, and what you are. Passwords are part of the what you know group. Keycards and two-factor authentication fall into the category of what you have. And lastly, biometrics fill that role of what you are. First up is fingerprint scanner. This is very common and we frequently see it as a means of authentication. It is convenient and typically fast and rarely fails. It can be tricked using a high-resolution photo of a fingerprint, but getting that is difficult at best, although not impossible. The iris scan looks for patterns within an eye's iris. The pattern is unique and can be matched to a specific person. Iris scan is reliable, but is a more expensive technology and not frequently seen. A retina scan is also based on the eye. It looks at the placement of your optic nerve, which is also unique and can be used to identify the person. As with the iris scan, it is a more expensive technology and not often seen in the corporate world. VoicePrint is the last option on this menu. It isn't as reliable as the other options on this list, although is as easy to use as a fingerprint scanner. The problem with the VoicePrint is that they can be tricked relatively easily with pre-recorded phrases, and additionally, your voice may change. For example, if you have a sore throat or a cold, you may not sound exactly the same, and this may lead you to be stuck outside. Okay, let's review what we discussed in this module through a learning check. Okay, ready? What do we call a set of cement pillars that you'll find in front of most supermarket entrances? If you said bollards, you would be correct. Name the biometric option that reads your voice. Okay, that's voice print. Now, we talked about a tool that can be used to create a wireless access point attack or give you a reverse shell by leveraging PowerShell. What's the name of that tool? Yes, it's the Social Engineering Toolkit. And last but not least, what is the best defense that we have against social engineering attacks today? It's security awareness training. At present, there's no better way of preventing social engineering attacks than education. We began this module with a closer look at rogue websites. We learned that using tools like the Social Engineering Toolkit, we can easily craft complex attacks and deploy them. These types of attacks can easily lead to identity theft and insider threats. We looked at how an employee may use the Social Engineering Toolkit to obtain the credentials of a supervisor or an administrative user, and we've discussed the various ways by which identity theft can lead to fraud. We then looked at countermeasures such as security awareness training, benefits of two-factor authentication, and policies and procedures. We discussed physical security as well and learned that man traps, bollards, and surveillance can be used to minimize or prevent an attack. Last but not least, we looked at biometric access controls, which are part of the 3 authentication factors known as what you are. These include fingerprint scans, iris scans, retina scans, and voice prints. Next, we'll review the entire social engineering domain. See you in the next module. Touched on some of this already. Let's take a few minutes to talk more about access that we can achieve using physical social engineering techniques. In a social setting, either at Starbucks or at someone's office, information can be simply visible or audible. We may be able to make something out on someone's screen. It may be on a sticky note on a wall, or you may be able to hear something that gives you some sort of an edge. Having physical access to a location may mean that you can get into the network closet or data center. Now imagine what you could do if you were able to get access to a physical server or network running the organization. Sometimes a call is less likely to get you what you want. Email and SMS are not much better, but being there in person may do the trick. The scenario we covered earlier where soggy documents prompted you to request a reprint is a scenario that you could only carry out in person. I've often walked through corporate offices and noted each and every computer that wasn't locked and unattended to. These types of finds can help you get a foothold quickly and easily as well. Let's talk a bit about physical attack vectors. How do we gain entrance if we don't have appropriate ID? Well, simply walking in with someone else can often do the trick. It helps to have your hands full, or you may even have a fake ID card with you. If the door is already open, you can simply pretend to swipe it as you walk through the door. This is known as tailgating or piggybacking. If you're able to get a hold of an existing ID card, using RFID cloning equipment, you can create your own copy of a given card. Once a clone is made, it'll work just like the official card. Sitting at cafes or observing someone working is known as shoulder surfing or eavesdropping. This technique can be used to obtain information such as usernames and passwords, and even provide insight that you can incorporate into your pretext. As mentioned earlier, if a company doesn't shred documents, they may be in a dumpster out back. Gathering intelligence about an organization may require you to spend some time with the corporate garbage. Using this technique, we can obtain invoices, purchase orders, passwords, financial data, and possibly even personally identifiable information directly from documents people throw away. Impersonation is another technique heavily used in physical social engineering. For example, having a uniform of any kind gives your presence some authority. People just don't think that someone would put on a uniform if it wasn't for an official purpose. As such, you may be able to get access to network closets or get into someone's PC simply by asking. Baiting allows you to offer something to the target. For example, how about a $25 Amazon gift card sent to them via email in PDF format simply for answering some simple questions? Of course, the PDF will create the shell you need to gain a foothold, all thanks to the bait, in this case, the $25 Amazon gift card. Time to review with a learning check. If I was to ask you what social engineering principle helps you manipulate someone by doing them a favor or giving them a small gift, what would you say? If you said reciprocity, you would be correct. Now, if I asked you to describe and explain your backstory, what am I referring to? Yep, you guessed it, pretext is the right answer. Now here's an easy one. If you send an email to a bunch of employees at Company X asking them to log into a specific portal by a certain date or their account will be suspended, what are you doing? Yes, you're phishing. Okay, and if you're going through the corporate garbage bin, what are you doing? Yes, we're dumpster diving. In this module, we reviewed social engineering concepts. You should be able to identify and describe the 6 principles of social engineering, which are reciprocity, commitment, social proof, authority, liking, and scarcity. We talked about the 4 phases of a social engineering attack, which include research, choosing a target, pretext, and exploit. These 4 phases help us establish the specific attack vectors that we'll be using, which can be phishing, vishing, smishing, or impersonation, or any combination. Physical attack vectors include tailgating, RFID cloning, shoulder surfing, dumpster diving, and baiting. Lastly, impersonation can be physical or digital. We can pretend to be the CEO, a courier with important documents, or we can be sending phishing emails that look like legitimate ones, or even clone an existing website and use them as rogue websites. In the next module, we'll look at consequences of these types of attack, including identity theft and insider threats. We'll also look at the various countermeasures available to us to deal with social engineering attacks. See you there.